not be shaky. Yeah. There's quite a lot of truths. This is on. There's quite a lot of truths that God revealed to me about honour. That's what I'm talking about this morning, and it's a little bit tricky to know where to start. I want to start with who's been blessed by Sam? Yeah. Where is she? Wow. Sam, you are such an incredible person, and I so value who you are in this place. And I can see that at the moment you're a fire in this place, and I see you like a furnace, and God is burning you cleaner and cleaner. And I'm seeing like from what's coming out of the chimney was like smoke, and now it's just burning so clean, and God's like, the fire is so roaring in your life that it doesn't matter all of the crap that's around you or that you think is going to make a difference, because once it's thrown into the fire, it just burns away, it disintegrates. And Eth, I just want to honour you as well. I want to say God has designed you to be close to the heart of the Father. And I feel like God has highlighted you on purpose this morning just to say it's a personal invitation for you. It's a turning point right now. It's a serious call. It sort of feels like when Paul was talking to Timothy and he was like, you can chase the youthful things of this world or you can choose God. Yeah. I feel like God has given me quite a few keys, and my prayer would be this morning that that through the things that I say, that people get to receive keys. And what is a key for? It's for an unlocking. And once it's unlocked, you actually don't need that key again. The door's unlocked, but you don't throw the key out. The key's there in case that door gets locked again. And so I feel like hopefully these truths, that you will be able to hold on to them and to step into them. I also wanted to say that this morning the stuff that I've prepared is not the revelation of other people. It's not the revelation because of something that I've read from what someone has said. And it's not an accumulation of knowledge. It's not because of how intelligent or clever I might have been. It's entirely just the revelation that I feel like God has shared with me. All right. I also have way too many notes, so there's probably an expectation that I'll get halfway through, and then we'll figure out what to do with the rest. But come back tonight, yeah. Who's here till 4 o'clock in the arvo? So I'm going to... These are the points that I've got, and we'll see what we get through, but we're going to start with honouring. Then we're going to move to understanding honour and the types of honour. We're going to talk about how humility leads to honour, and we're going to talk about the culture of honour. So... I want to first honour God. So I don't want that to be a cliche statement right now, but honouring God can look like a lot of things. And one thing that I feel like is very relevant to this morning is it's the revelation and obedience to that revelation that is important. So it's the obedience to him above the behaviour for others. And I want to say that again, it's the obedience to God above the behaviour for others. There's this big pull in our world, and it's in culture. So the culture that we have in this place, in this world, the culture would tell us that, in the world would tell us that we have to behave a certain way, and then once we behave that way, then we can believe, and then once we believe, then we can belong. But in the kingdom, it's the exact opposite. We belong first, and then we believe, and then we behave out of that. I don't get to honour Ash here, but because she's in running children's church. But Ash is a weapon. Yeah. She never gives up. For those that don't know, Ash is my wife. She always wants to do what's right, and she values being esteemed by others who are close to her. She loves honesty and integrity, and she treats me with love and kindness. And she loves being a part of the family and contributing to the team. I want to honour Pete and Carolyn as well. Did you know it's like, yeah, you can clap. That's good. It's funny when you're like talking, you want to be light-hearted, but then in a topic of honour, I don't know how to be light-hearted about it. But when I was thinking about you, Pete, and about what to say in terms of honouring, it was like a bizarre revelation that came. It was like, I feel like the most amount of honour that I could give you was to just live the fullest life that God had for me. I almost feel like when we live out, all of us live out the call on our life and are walking that out to the fullness, that's when you feel the most honoured. Hopefully that's right. And I just want to say these guys honour me so much, like way more than I probably deserve. But the way they honour me is I have a prophetic call on my life, and the things that I share with them and share with this house, they actually take seriously. And in moments that I just say what I feel like God is saying, but sometimes it's hard to know what you're saying is truth or not, but you're sharing what is the heart of God in your life. For example, the doors open at 9, that's something that came to me, and God said, I want this to be a culture of not start time, but a doors open time. I want it, God was saying, I want to move it away from a service and about a community. And then these guys, you know, I'm bringing that revelation that I'm sharing, but it's not up to me to just walk everything out. And these guys took hold of the word and started walking it out. And I believe that we're going to come into seasons now where God is revealing truths to the prophets and to people, and we're going to start seeing incredible fruit as we walk it out. I had a prophetic word back in the start of last year where God said that honour will be the mark of a church who's authentically following God. I think we often look for the glorious fruit, like how good the worship is or how good the speaking is, but God was saying it's the culture of honour that is going to be the mark. So it's, I guess, as well why I feel like honour is so important. So honour in our understanding now, Honour came from the Latin word honos, or honour, which was known from someone's reputation, the ceremonies or rewards placed over them. So hence honour came to mean respect, esteem, or deference paid to or received by a person in consideration of that individual's character, worth, or position. That was a bit of a mouthful, eh? I can say that again. Hence the word honour came to mean respect, esteem, or deference paid to or received by a person in consideration of that individual's character, worth, or position. Who knows when honour was first mentioned in the Bible? Who thinks that it was at the start, first chapter? Who thinks it was in the first 20 chapters? No one? First time it was mentioned is all the way in Genesis 34:19, 2,000 years after Genesis 1. Fair bit of time, eh? It surprised me. There's a principle called the law of first mention. It's when there's a word that's mentioned in the Bible that the way that word is released in that context is the way to judge that word they're following through the rest of the Bible. I feel like God's saying don't go into that, so I'm not going to go into that. But honour is very closely tied with blessing. But it's different in this sense. I really want you guys to be alert and awake and understanding for what I'm going to share, because there's a couple of points here which I feel like is really important, and God is highlighting. This section here is one of them right now. Honour. So blessing is releasing identity and provision over someone's life. So when God created Adam and he kneeled and he blessed Adam, he spoke identity over him, he spoke provision over his life. Honour is placing value on the person God created them to be and being able to see them through that identity. So while blessing is a releasing and an imparting, honour is a seeing and a moving. So it's the ability to see correctly, but it also requires an action. So blessing in relation to God, blessing God is the consequent nature of a person whose life is consumed with knowing him and obeying his words and prompts. I'll say that again. Blessing God is the consequent nature of a person whose life is consumed with knowing him and obeying his words or prompts. Honouring God is the consequent nature of a person who chooses to listen and stay true to God despite the options and ability of leaning on their own understanding. Do you remember last week I think that was last week, when Pete was talking about the leaning on God? So honour is the ability to know that you can lean on your own understanding, but you choose not to. You choose to lean closer into God. You choose to lean into him. Which is extremely difficult for us Westerners, because we just feel like we've got all the answers. Yeah. And then when we feel like we don't have the answers, that we're going to fail miserably. If you want to turn to Proverbs 3, verse 5, or write it down. I like to read the Passion Translation a lot of the time. I don't know how many people have looked at different types of Bibles, but I love the heart of the Passion Translation. So I'm going to read that out here. So it's 5 to 13. Trust in the Lord completely and do not rely on your own opinions. With all your heart, rely on him to guide you, and he will lead you in every decision you make. Become intimate with him in whatever you do, and he will lead you wherever you go. Don't think for a moment that you know it all, for wisdom comes when you adore him with undivided devotion and avoid everything that's wrong. Then you will find the healing and refreshment for your body and spirit that you long for. Glorify God with all your wealth, honouring him with your first fruits, with every increase that comes to you. Then every dimension of your life will overflow with blessings from an uncontainable source of inner joy. My child, when the Lord speaks to you, never take his words lightly, and never be upset when he corrects you, for the Father's discipline only comes from his passionate love and pleasure for you. Even when it seems like his correction is harsh, it's still better than any father on earth gives to his child. Blessings pour over the ones who find wisdom, for they obtain living understanding, and as wisdom increases, a great treasure is imparted, greater than many bars of refined gold. That's such a cool... There's so many cool things in there, like even just when you're... In the NKJV, it's this part here is a little bit more easy to understand, but if it says it will be health to your flesh and strength to your bones, that's literal, right? He's not saying spiritually strengthen your flesh and spiritually strengthen your bones. So he literally gives you how to do that. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. It will be health to your flesh and strength to your bones. So why is honour even important? They took 2,000 years to mention it in the Bible. Honour not only releases people to be who God made them, but it also unlocks the ability of heaven to be released over your life. Honour not only releases people to be who God made them, but it also unlocks the ability of heaven to be released over your life. The word honour or honourable or honoured is mentioned in 65 verses in the New Testament. The main one that it's used is the word timeo, which is to prize, fix a value upon, revere. This is a really interesting point here. In the New Testament, honour is mentioned in 65 verses. I think it's about 75 times or something like that. The most that it's mentioned is in Revelations. Sort of bizarre book to mention honour. So 9 times it's mentioned in Revelations, or nine verses. The second most is in John, which is 7 times. I don't know if anyone remembers this from when Pete spoke last week, but does anyone remember who Jesus entrusted his mum to? How many people know how many of the disciples lived to a long age? There was only one. It was John. What does the Bible say about honour your father and mother? Your days may be long upon the land which God is giving you. Isn't that interesting? We've got the only disciple who lived a long life, also the person who mentions honour the most, also the person who looks after not only his mother and father, but Jesus' mother. Incredible. And not to say the other disciples weren't lesser, and they were martyred. But isn't it just quite a bizarre idea that could the honouring of a father and mother be so great that it surpasses life itself? I feel like God's just saying as well on that it is a physical mother and father, but it's a spiritual mother and father in your life too. Totally your decision if you want to honour them. I shared a couple of weeks ago about humility when I just shared that little snippet. I think it was my 5-minute snippet was about 15 minutes. But hopefully people wrote some notes or remember some of that. But I shared how humility leads to honour, because the greatest honour is often bestowed upon the least deserving. You know, when Jesus said, when you loved the least of these, you loved me. When you looked after the brokenhearted, when you looked after the orphaned, when you looked after the least of these, you were loving me. And in that, if anyone's writing notes, that was at Proverbs 15:33. The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honour is humility. So here's some really cool points as well. Humility allows us to consider the purposes of God before the thoughts and comfort of self. Humility allows us to consider the purposes of God before the thoughts and comfort of self. I must decrease and he must increase. This is the marriage of humility and honour. Us decreasing is the humility, him increasing is the honour. Humility is how I position myself, honour is how I position others. It takes humility to hear a word, but it takes honour to walk it out. I feel like the issue that often happens with humility is that people feel like if they humble themselves, that people will take advantage of them, or that the result will be them not increasing, because we have this culture where we always want to be increasing. You know, the world is pushing to accumulate more things. Your life is pushing to earn more money and to have more things and to have the latest car and all of these things. And humility is well before all of those steps, but humility often feels like we're not increasing. It feels like we're decreasing, which feels countercultural. When I was sitting there in the worship, God was showing me a picture of a daisy, and he was saying how humility is like planting the seed in the ground and you see no daisy. And you feel like nothing is happening because all you're doing is just putting a seed in the ground. And then honour is the growth that begins to happen before the flower comes out. So it's like this tiny green stem, and you just think, if you didn't know, like if you hadn't seen it 100 times and you just saw this little green, what looks like grass nearly, this little green stem come out and there's no flower on it, you'd just be thinking, like, what is this? Like, there's nothing in it. And then all of a sudden, a flower pops out. And that's the result of humility and honour. That's not the part that we try and achieve. The part that we do is planting the seed, and the honour will come as we grow. Yeah. So the thing that I feel is that largely the desire to be seen or not seen often stops humility from leading to honour. And it's both of those that will, which is quite weird, but it's both of those things that will cause you to stay away from humility, being not wanting to be seen or wanting to be seen, which is, so someone that wants to be seen, it's the opposite of humility, right? It's this desire to like, I need someone like, look at me, look at what I'm doing. Like, I need some form of affirmation, of accreditation. Like, look at what I'm doing. And the person that doesn't want to be seen wants to stay hidden. They're like, I'm not worthy. Don't even consider me. Don't look at me. Don't, like, I'm nothing. I've got nothing to give. And both of those things are wrong. Both are wrong because God already saw that you were good from the moment he made you. In the garden, God creates Adam and Eve. In fact, everything that he creates, he literally creates every day and then says the thing that he created, that he saw that it was good. So God's already seen that you are good and you haven't even done anything. It's just because we're looking in other places to find our worth so that someone can see us. And as long as we're looking in the other places to find people to see us, we'll never realize the real truth that God's already seen us. Yeah. So this desire to be seen or not seen starts back in the garden, as I was just saying. So Genesis 3 verse 6. Eve saw, so this is after they've been created, but Eve saw the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil produced delicious fruit that looked appealing and gave someone insight. So she took the fruit and ate it, and she gave some to her husband who was with her, who also ate it. I'm going to do a quick recap here. Hopefully people are... Do we need a break? Do we need to stand up? No? We're good? All right. Quick recap. So God creates and sees that what he's made is good, including man, and including the options for man to choose not to do a right thing. He didn't say that everything he created was good, except for the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of good and evil. They should have a little nickname for that tree, I think. It's a lot of words. So men and women are living these incredible lives of intimacy with God. And often we feel like if only we could be in the garden, you know, that alone time with God, everything perfect, only one bad choice, like, you know, we would all be, we're essentially like, that's what we're trying to get to, is like just almost like being back to the garden again. But men and women are living these incredible lives of intimacy with God where he walked with them daily, face to face. Like, I love what you shared the other day about presence wasn't even a word in that culture. It was, what are you both? Yeah. She just explained it better than the story of your life. No. Walked with them daily, face to face, and taught them mysteries and poured his love onto them. Such a cool experience to be a part of. And the devil tempts Eve with an ability to form her own conclusions. So that's the temptation there, right? One thing that I noticed is clear is that she stops focusing on God and turns her attention inward. And when I'm saying inward, it's different to now where God is living on the inside of us. I hope everyone understands that. So it's when she's turning her attention inward, it's not towards God, it's towards self. Yeah. So, in other words, she shifted from a place of humility to a place of ability. Okay? From humility, where it was about a positioning before the Father, where he poured his life and love over her, to a place of ability where she thinks that knowledge will be the key to her success, her increase. And then it says in verse 7, Genesis 3, verse 7, immediately their eyes were open and they realized they were naked, vulnerable and ashamed, and so they sewed fig leaves together for coverings. What was their eyes open to? Anyone can shout it out. Self? Their own what? Took their eyes off Jesus, yeah. But what was their eyes open to? I mean, their eyes were open before. Independence. Their own nakedness. Interesting that God didn't want them to know evil or good. I find it interesting that the tree wasn't called the knowledge of evil. It was the knowledge of good and evil. Why would God not want them to know good or evil? Sorry? Weight's a good word there for sure, Dan, because weight is really the definition of one of the definitions of honour. Is actually weight. It's like when someone walks in the room and you can feel the weight of them, whether it's good or bad. It's a weight. So sometimes it is. So because knowledge draws our attention to our ability and experience, instead of humility, which draws our attention away from our ability and experience. Did you guys get that? It's because knowledge draws our attention to our ability and experience instead of humility, which draws our attention away from ability and experience. God I'm going to say that. I'll move on. What was Adam and Eve's attention filled with before that moment? God. Yeah. God, His words, His purpose, His love. They weren't full of knowledge, they were full of humility and honour and understanding. Understanding and knowledge are very different, eh? It seems like the same word, but understanding can come, well, ideally, God wants it to come from Him. Knowledge means that it forms in us and it's something that we start to conclude for ourselves. Understanding is knowing that we know a little bit, but we don't know much at all if we compare it to, ours is a little grain of sand in the entire ocean. Understanding is a full picture. Knowledge is thinking that you have the full picture. And what was the Adam and Eve's attention filled with after that moment when they ate? Knowledge, self, their own ability, their own shame. And also interesting to see what happens. What happens when man gets filled with knowledge and ability, or focus on their ability? What's the first thing that they do? They hide. Yeah, they cover themselves. They hide from God. They try and disconnect. Interesting that knowledge starts to position them as God, because now they are making decisions for themselves. They're choosing that disconnection is actually a better option, that hiding is a better option, that shame is what I'm going to lean into. And it flips like that. And that still happens today, right? God is a redeemer and He has created a way for us to connect back in, thank God. But unchecked, if we don't choose to lean back into God, that's what we can experience. And interesting, the first act of God when that happened? What was the first act of God? First act of God was trying to connect. It was doing what he had always done, walking through the garden, talking to them, pouring love. It's like sometimes we realise when we read those scriptures, like they became aware of their nakedness and they become aware of their shame. God was well aware of what they had just done. And the serving of consequence did come, but it wasn't the first thing that God did. They made a wrong choice, and the first thing that God did was try to connect. Yeah. And then the second thing that God did, which is beautiful too, I think, because consequence will happen. And I feel like sometimes we don't talk about consequence because it's such a prickly topic that none of us want to experience. But like God was highlighting to me even last night, like the 10 Commandments, you know, those 10 Commandments were there for the purpose of connecting with God, because if we were staying away from sin, I know that's not the focus now, but if we're staying away from sin, it means connection to God. So they eat the apple, God tries to connect, they try and disconnect. God says, basically, why would you do that? You know that I'm always here for you. You know that I had every intention of giving you every good thing that you could ever ask for. And I've already told you what will happen if you choose this bad decision. And God is true to his word. You know, that's an important thing to realise here too. It wasn't a punishment because God saw that they did a bad thing. It was a consequence because he had already set out what they needed to do, and they didn't do it. And he told them what would happen if they didn't do it. So God says, he banishes them and he says, you can't enter into the garden anymore. So at this point, they're feeling pretty rubbish, right? Like they're feeling like they are well aware that they have stuffed up in life. They're well aware that they have made probably every bad decision possible, even though they had one choice of a bad decision. And what does God do again? He makes clothes for them. So even in their bad decision, he covers their shame. He prepares them. He provides for them. Even as a place when they're now cast out of the garden and it's desolate, he provides for them and he covers them. I'll go to this. So in Matthew 13, so this is where Jesus is talking about, in parables, he's talking about the seeds. So the seeds, the soil, he's talking about the weeds, he's talking about the treasure in the land, he's talking about the pearl of great price. He's sort of sharing some of like our most pivotal parables that we anchor on, right? Pretty incredible revelation moment. He's just like bombarded everyone with like incredible revelations. And then we jump to verse 54. So Jesus is preaching and it's incredible. It's amazing. Like they are blown away at how someone could be having these revelations and they are receiving it. And then all of a sudden, familiarity starts to creep in and they start to say, well, but who isn't this guy the one that grew up here? Like, don't we know his brother and sister and his mum and his dad? And this guy can't really be receiving all this revelation because we we know who he is. Like, and I feel like this is one of the easiest topics for us to understand in terms of honor. Jesus says the prophet is only without honor in his own house, in his own town. The only time. So I think actually it is the only time that he said that, but he did say those words. It's the only time that a prophet is without honor. So then what started as honor because it was what they were placing on Jesus quickly moved to doubt and unbelief. It's why doubt and unbelief and fear can be such the opposing behaviours, beliefs that keep us away from honour. So I'm just going to skip through a little bit here, so just bear with me. Sorry, I would have done some notes up here too, because it's a bit hard with someone just talking like non-stop. And if I had enough time, I would have done some wicked slides. So you guys could all... I'm not an audit learner either, so like when people are talking, I'm going mad just trying to keep notes just so I can remember what's even being said. So soon after this, so there's this incredible moment. He's shared some of the most amazing revelation. Then those closest to him, his friends, his family, you know, that's important to remember there. It's the close ones to him are the ones that shame him, the ones that don't want to position him correctly. Like, it hurts big time. Like, you know, it'd be like me coming and doing this and then having 10 people come up to me after and be like, oh, I don't actually know if I want to hear from you again. I don't want you to come up the front again and share. Like, that's how hard it would feel. So soon after this, like really soon, his brother, his cousin, John the Baptist, is beheaded. So as if it's not enough that his family and friends shamed him, now his cousin, one of the people he was closest to on the earth, is killed. And the disciples of John come to tell Jesus, and Jesus wants some time in solitude, you know. This is him wanting to draw in, to lean into the Father. And it says that people followed him. He wanted to go to solitude, but people were well aware of who he was and what he was doing, so they started to follow him. And I can just imagine if that was me, I would just be like, dude, like, just give me some space, like, you know. And like, I don't want to do any of... I don't want to minister. I don't want to heal anyone. I don't want to preach. Like, I just want some space. Like, and it says that he was moved with compassion. He heals them all. Like, the man that deserved to have nothing expected of him continues to honour God and choose God above his own understanding, above his own knowledge, above his own feelings. Then after that comes the feeding of the 5,000. It was the first time that he does a miracle on that scale. So he's gone straight from the family dishonouring him, his cousin dying, healing everyone in his vicinity and radius, feeding 5,000 people plus. And then somewhere between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning, while he's praying, Peter walks on water because Jesus calls him out. And then he says, why did you doubt? The word doubt there actually sort of sounds like disaster, but it's in the Greek it's distadzo, to duplicate, to waver in opinion. And what God started showing me is that what happens, and I'll link this back, but what happens is when Peter steps out of the boat, where is his attention? Jesus. As he begins to walk, where is his attention? Around him. It's the sea, it's the storm. When I come up the front and when I was preparing, the self in me is scared to no end that the things that I'm going to share are going to be wrong or not enough, or I don't have what it takes, or all of the doubt and all of the insecurities and all of the worries of what is going on around me. The only thing that keeps me true is going, God's called me to do this. He's given me the revelation. That's what I'm going to step into. That's what I'm going to keep my focus. And when those moments come when I'm like, I shouldn't be doing this, or I can't do this, or all of those things, it's that re-leaning into God and refocusing of where my attention is. So it's back to the garden of where Adam and Eve's focus and attention was just on him. If it comes to eating the fruit and becoming aware of self, we draw back and we go, no, attention is on you. Jesus is saying over these last 2 chapters, it isn't about the knowledge in your heads or the resource in your hands or your ability to see what is around you. It isn't about the knowledge in your heads, the resource in your hands, or your ability to see what is around you. Can everyone actually write that down? Who's taking notes? It isn't about the knowledge in your heads or the resource in your hands or your ability to see what is around you. If your eyes are not fixed on him, you can block the miraculous nature of heaven being released in your life. And that's going back to that, what I was trying to explain with what honour does. Where even was that? Honour not only releases people to be who God made them, but it also unlocks the ability of heaven to be released over your life. If your eyes are not fixed on him, you can block the miraculous nature of heaven being released in your life. It happened literally time and time again. So at the start, it was the familiarity. It was those who were friends and family, and they blocked the miraculous nature of heaven being released over their life. When Peter was walking on water, it wasn't that he wasn't close to God. God was still close to him. He still knew what he'd been called to do. But his eyes moved from being fixed on Jesus, and he started to block the miraculous nature of heaven being released over his life. I mean, in that moment, the miraculous nature was walking on water. It doesn't get a lot more miraculous than that. I feel this is what I feel. I to be honest, I haven't actually checked that this is scriptural. For a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing, I spent hours making sure what I'm saying is right, because I felt the weight of sharing these things and not wanting to be misleading and not wanting to give you guys wrong revelation. You know, it was really important to me. But this is a feeling that I had, but the amount of honour that you bestow on the one before you is the measure of how much the kingdom of God can be released into your life through them. The amount of honour you bestow on the one before you is the measure of how much the kingdom of God can be released into your life through them. And loyalty and honour are best displayed when you don't agree. I think we often think that we just need to keep on having honour and honour and honour and honour, that leads to a big amount of honour. But the biggest opportunity for loyalty and honour comes when you're conflicted, when you don't agree, when you're given an opportunity to be dishonourable. That's when honour has the opportunity to grow. So it's a very important thing, because in a place like, well, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but in a place like this, you would think it's easy to honour, but maybe it's not. Who knows? I think it's easy to honour here. But when the opportunity comes for your knowledge and heart to be conflicted by the truth and words of heaven, honouring and loyalty get tested. That's where they get the opportunity to grow. Can people recognise that? The opportunity for what they're feeling being conflicted with the truth of heaven. How much time have I got? 5. All right, I'll try and I'll talk a little bit about the culture of honour. So, remember earlier I had said honouring God is the consequent nature of a person who chooses to listen and stay true to God despite the options and ability of leaning on their own understanding. Honour is seeing and moving. And honour not only releases people to be who God made them, but it also unlocks the ability of heaven to be released over your life. I want to just jump to 1 Peter 3, verse 6 to 7. Peter 3, 6, 7. It says, our mother Sarah, referring to Abraham's wife, devoted herself to her husband, Abraham, and even called him master. You have become her daughters when you do what is right without fear and intimidation. Husbands, you must in turn treat your wives with tenderness, viewing them as feminine partners who deserve to be honoured, for they are co-heirs with you of the divine grace of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. I want to just bring out 2 points in this scripture. So the first part, wives can become daughters of Sarah when you do what is right without fear and intimidation. So why would you want to be a daughter of Sarah? In Genesis 17, verse 19, that's where this is talked about for Sarah. God shares to, I don't know if he's called him Abram or Abraham at that stage, but he says, Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. So becoming a daughter of Sarah requires faith in the midst of fear and doubt. It requires devotion to your husband. It requires doing what is right. And the result is being blessed, having others being blessed by you, taking possession of the land and promises for your life, and becoming a great family. That were the promises for Sarah with the covenant that was made with Abraham and Isaac. The second point, it says, husbands, you must in turn treat your wives with tenderness, viewing them as feminine partners who deserve to be honoured, for they are co-heirs with you of the divine grace of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. In this example, it's obviously saying to husbands, maybe husbands need to hear it more than wives, but for everyone to listen. And remember what I was sharing the other day when I was saying how we look for information, But in the Jewish time, they looked for identification. They looked for who they were in this story. So I just want all you guys, to put yourself as that person who must treat your partner with tenderness, or treat others with tenderness, honour them. So at the end it says, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. This is important. The word hinder there is the Greek word akopto, and it means to frustrate, to cut off, to cut down, to cut out. Why is that important? Because it's saying not residing together as a family, not honouring your partner, not treating them with kindness can cause your prayers to be cut off or cut down. It's pretty big. It's pretty big that you could be considering yourself the most holy person. It's why these guys value so much who you really are at home more than who you want to display out to everyone else. It's why we value heart-to-heart connections. It's why we value a community instead of a church Sunday morning service. Because if you don't reside with your family and honour your partner and treat them with kindness, then your prayers can be cut down and cut off. It's such a big thing, eh? Like, so big. Like, for me, I'm thinking, like, you may as well not even pray if you're going to just be disrespectful and not honouring and not wanting to reside with your family. Hopefully that wasn't too sharp. This will be the last point. I'll stop. If we turn to Genesis 22:13. So Abraham, I think this is good to finish with too, because ultimately the person that we are supposed to honour the most is God, not people. That doesn't look like disregarding or rejection of people, but it does look like the knowledge that you have in your mind actually giving that up for leaning on God and his truth. So Abraham honoured God when he agreed to be obedient to what he was asked and sacrificed his only son. We've talked a lot about how God had to send his only son to die. This is the exact same thing. Only this is coming on just before when I was talking about they'd just been promised. So Sarah was 90 and Abraham was 100. He lived to 150. So, but at that age they weren't having kids. You know, they were still 100 years old, 90 years old. And there's this incredible miracle, and straight away God is asking him to sacrifice the miracle. The very thing that he provided for them is a thing that he asked them to give up. Whereas we tend to feel, well, if God gave it to me, it's mine. And he didn't even get to physically carry out what God had asked him to do, sacrificing his son, but he was fully prepared to do so. You know, actually, did I write that down? I didn't write that down, but it says when God spoke that, immediately the next morning, he moved like that. Even though sadness would have absolutely filled his heart and he would have been so confused as to, like, why the heck would God do that? Why would he ask me to give up the very thing that he's provided for me? It literally makes no sense. The knowledge in my head is telling me that this is not a good idea. So 22 verse 13, Abraham looked up and glanced around, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up for a burnt offering, a sending sacrifice instead of his son. And then verse 17 to 18. And this is on the back of obedience and honor, right? This is that daisy thing that God was showing me in worship of the flower at the end. It says, "Indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed like the stars of the heavens and like the sand on the seashore, and your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies. Through your seed, all my nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have heard and obeyed my voice." All of the blessing of heaven, all of the releasing of heaven came on the back of obedience and honor. I fully believe that if he didn't do that, he wouldn't have the nature of heaven be released entirely over his life, unrestricted. Honor unlocks the ability of heaven to be released over your life. God, I pray that this morning and going forward, that the things that you've shared to me, that I've shared to these guys, would become keys in our hand to unlock doors that have been locked, to unlock things that we have not yet been able to walk into. Father, I pray that you would establish a culture of humility and a culture of honor in this place. Father, I pray as we use humility to hear your words and as we use honor to walk it out, that we'd begin to start seeing the manifest presence and the release of God's kingdom over this place and in our hearts and in our lives. Father, I pray that we would begin to see not only you rightly and position you rightly, but to position those around us rightly. That we would begin to see them as who you've created them to be and not who is being necessarily displayed in front of us. Father, I pray right now, I pray that everyone here can, if they choose to, release the knowledge that they're holding that says that they know better. Release the knowledge that they're holding that says, I know who that person is. I know what they've done. I know what the better decision is. Father, and I pray that we would lean back into you, that we would reconnect with you, that we wouldn't hide ourselves with shame, that we wouldn't hide ourselves from your presence, but we would lean back into you so that we can receive every single part of the full identity and love that you have always intended for us. Father, I pray that we would be connected with you. Just as your first act when we did the wrong thing was to reconnect, I pray that we would begin to learn that it's about a reconnection. And it's not in the sense that we're disconnected. We don't get to disconnect. He's always there. But it is our responsibility to choose to reconnect into him. Thank you, Father.